Security Unfiltered, Ep.7. Today, we're going to be talking about the Microsoft Exchange vulnerability that has been discovered this past week that is running rampant throughout the world. I mean, it is crazy. I just read an article that they're saying that like it's still going thousands of breaches per hour. I mean, how crazy is that?
I mean,
There isn't
honestly,
enough incident response companies in the world to respond to that. They have to automate the response somehow.
you're going to see more and more of this. Heightened visibility because of the solar winds, because of some of the other, issues that have been, taking place more recently. But just imagine all the things that we don't get visibility on. And this was one of those where it was,
Yeah.
highly public, highly visible. And they published the alarms and the alerts. But yeah, it's crazy because, they were saying 18,000, 19,000 for solar winds and how massive that was. But as of the last few hours, I saw upwards of 60,000 compromised organizations worldwide. I know it was around 30,000 U.S. side, but now they're taking in the whole U.S. The worldwide numbers. So they're saying about
Yeah.
60,000. And there's a few things like Joe's mentioned that they're doing to try to get visibility on that to see how many exchange servers out there actually have these artifacts on there. But yeah, it's
I
rampaging.
mean, like people are saying that if you have an exchange server or OWA server connected to the internet, it's already compromised.
Yeah, I don't know
Like they're
about
not
that.
even saying like test it. They're literally saying like you can fully expect that it's compromised.
Well, yeah, it's probably some worm mechanism behind that, right? Where it's just automatically scripting out and exploiting and putting the web shell on there. So as long as you have
Yeah.
an IP address that's public, you're probably going to get, enumerated and it's going to probably be a dropper in some capacity. So you want to patch. And I guess that's kind of the main topic of this today's episode is how these vulnerabilities like this are they're enabled by number one, bad software development lifecycle practices. um just the other day I saw Google Chrome said that they were trying to expedite their releases to 2 weeks instead of, I think, a 4 week cadence. So what do you think is going to
Mm,
happen when you're going to now release 2 weeks your
right.
Chrome updates, right? And they're already having issues with 0 days becoming more and more prevalent. So now you have 2 weeks to try to squeeze in everything. But then no emergency patch management, no emergency vulnerability patch management response. And you're going to see a lot of organizations take on this risk management uh, you know um, assessment and response of, well, is it worth taking down our servers in order to patch these things? And a lot of times you want to see them go with the premise that it's worth it to keep these servers up and pumping out the services they are versus actually taking them down and losing that availability.
Man, I I don't think I've been in an environment like that except for maybe one place where it was like, yeah, we're not going to take them down to patch them, like immediately. Like I've been places where it was like, oh, it's 1 PM and this thing just came out. Like, I'm about to go get approval to go do it right now. Like, middle of the day, everyone go home. By the time everyone's home, it's gonna be patched and we'll be good. Like, I've
Yeah,
had like teams literally do that, and man, it was crazy. It was crazy patching like TLS vulnerabilities. I mean, you remember when those came out?
yeah,
That
and
was insane. I mean, overnight, I me and the rest of the security team took the entire environment from like TLS 1.0 and lower to TLS 1.2.
yeah,
Didn't matter what it took.
yeah. If you have support, I mean, that's one thing, right? So, I mean, I guess this is where the security battle takes place between the security teams, just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and trying to convince the business in the organization in IT that that this has to be done, and hoping that you have the right voices, the right contacts, on the IT side, on the business side,
Yeah.
that'll help push that message. Because I mean, a lot of times, right, it becomes this, the boy who cries wolf. There's a vulnerability every week. There's a critical zero day every week. So why is this any different? And then you want to go into the technicals about why this is different. But if you haven't been doing that before, if you didn't have any impact analysis before, any risk, scenarios before, any risk scores before, then you're going to back yourself into a corner in which the only thing you're going to be able to bring them is the headline, the articles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult argument to have until you get breached. It's always a fight until you get breached or your top competitor gets breached. And then they're like, oh, they're spending billions to recover from that thing. Like their business just got cut like by a third. Oh, that's that's a real consequence right there. Like
Yeah.
I was at a place and our top competitor got breached. And I mean, it was here's a blank check, do what you want with it. Oh, you wanted that like $10 million solution? Have two. It doesn't matter. Go get two of them. Like,
Yeah.
we'll pay for anything. It doesn't matter. You want to double your head count? Sounds good to me. You want your own floor of the building? Oh, that's fine. We can move those other people somewhere else.
I mean, that's always great when it happens, but usually it's only temporary. So maybe you can ride that for about a year, year and a half.
You got to keep you got to keep finding a reason to legitimize that, to
Yeah.
rationalize
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
if your management can't do that, then yeah, it becomes very temporary. But like that place that I was at, man, I mean, they're doing nothing but growing. They had to purchase a floor in the building across the street for all the security people that they had. Like, and they're like, we need more. We need more. Well, upper
Yeah.
management, I think, is starting to catch on and be like, do you guys really need more at 200 people for a security team?
200 people. I wish.
Your look, the look on your face right
Come
there.
on. Hey, man. I mean, getting into the double digits would be a blessing in where some of the situations I've been in.
I mean,
Um,
I
you
started with
know,
a team of 3. I was
yeah,
one of 3.
yeah, right. It's like, 200. Yeah, there's goodness. What the possibilities.
Could you
Um,
imagine the politics just within the 200? The politics, like, not like, I wasn't worried about politics from other business units. I I could care less. The politics within that security team, man, oof,
so,
dude,
I mean, that's a much better problem to have. I mean, I'll throw a racy chart out there. I mean, forget the cross-functional process flows and all that. I would love to be able to say that, here's an incident response track, here's a vulnerability patch management track, here's an
yeah,
application security track, here's a risk management track, here's a compliance track, here's an auditing track. You know, that's a good problem to have. I mean, obviously, the politics obviously is they suck no matter what the situation is. But yeah, I mean, that kind of resource that's a good problem. But yeah, they like to say the management term is never let a good crisis go to waste.
you can't,
So yeah, and
can't.
that's when you
Everything that I've learned, man, you gotta
yeah,
milk it.
yeah, milk it, and try to get all the expedited program, items out there on the board, and see what you can get in. So a lot of times this is where you get your MFA put in, right? This is where you get your, web application firewall put in. This is where you get your SIM put in, right? Because it was like, hey, if we had a SIM, we would be able to see some of these correlated, events that kind of shows that that threat actor actually has a foothold into our environment, right?
Yeah. This is when you start disconnecting things from the internet. It's hard to believe that people still allow huge portions of their environment to be connected to the internet, like just directly unfiltered to the internet. Yeah, we're not worried about it. It's got a firewall on it. Windows firewall is pretty good. Huh? What?
Micro segmentation helps. I mean, if they get a foothold
Fence
into
in
it,
depth helps. It's
yeah,
a concept that, like, has, held true for, like, 2 decades.
it's
Like, you gotta be kidding me.
the basics, right? Where are your assets? Inventory of assets, inventory of software, your
Right.
vulnerability and patch management, your privilege access management, and your secure hardening over your endpoints. That's the CIS top 5 right there. And a lot of organizations don't even do it. You know, they even have poor asset management, so they don't have an understanding of all their assets and where their assets are, how they're connected. So a
Yeah,
CMDB type of situation where they can actually tell that, well, from that Exchange server, they can hop to this and this and this, right? Who are the actual privilege management administrators on these devices? Find out, that you got 20 damn admins on the server for some reason, and maybe six of the people left in the last quarter. So deprovisioning and making sure that your employees still need access, have the appropriate access, and you remove it when they no longer have access. Yeah, just the segmentation of the networks is a problem because you get to see that once these droppers hit a particular server, how they're able to get to all these different environments and different networks within an organization because you know it was easier to set it up this way. You
yeah,
didn't, and you see it sometimes with change management. They want to, say that, hey, can you guys let us open up this port or this connection with that, client? But do we really have to, put in a request every single time we want to open up another port or another service to those guys? Like, can we just open up that whole bandwidth, that whole subnet and be done with it? And it's like, no,
yeah.
that that's going to cause an issue if there is propagation of malware. So
Yeah. I mean, I've been in environments where, they don't they don't even want the Windows firewall turned on. And then, when we push back, these app teams are just like, well, I don't know what it needs to run, my application. And in the past, that's been a reasonable excuse to not do any work to, enable the firewall and have proper, limited access to the server.
yeah,
And so now we have a whole bunch of servers that just have no firewall turned on. I mean, Windows Firewall is one piece to this huge picture, just one little puzzle piece. Um, but I mean, do you think anything's going to change? What could possibly change with these huge vendors with 0 days like this? I mean, why can't they just figure out how to, I don't know, eliminate some of these? I feel like this is, I mean, I don't know the actual, technical specifications of it all, of like how it's being compromised and stuff. But man, it's just like, you have a vendor like Microsoft that reaches hundreds of thousands of customers worldwide every day. And they have some of the most popular technology, solutions out there. Outlook. Um, like I just feel like there has to be a better, way of doing this or securing that stuff right from the default.
yeah, it's kind of you're going to get it. It's never
Yeah.
going to go away. The foundation of software development. I mean, we're way too far and into technology and the life cycles of how technology is abstracted and developed and implemented and deployed to significantly make a change. Um, can you incrementally get better? Sure, I believe so. But the core premise behind software and technology development is for business enablement, and
Yep.
business drives the show. And it's all about getting that product out there, getting it out there quicker, faster than the competitors. And so you're going to always have that motivation to, push it out there. Now, I mean, maybe in 100 years, who knows? I don't know. AI can start helping China with the development of software and doing some of these, these static analysis and assessments on code and dynamic testing. But until then, we're going to still have people who are crunching, right? They need to get it out there. The release cycle was 6 weeks. The release cycle was 4 weeks, and they have to develop code. And one of the things that we know that is missing and sorely lacking, which is probably one of, I mean, outside of the top five like critical controls that CIS mentions, I think number 19, they might have changed it since 7.1. Um, it might be 18 or 17. Look it up. It's security awareness training,
Hmm.
right? It's the security awareness training. Security team going to the application teams and developing, some kind of training, whether and some of the the third party tools out there that help like Veracode or White Hat or some of the other ones, they have modules kind of built in now where you can have a plug-in in your ISE, and if you see that there's a cross-site scripting kind of issue
Right.
or buffer overflow issue, right, it'll take you to their learning portal, and then you can have those developers actually go through courses and receive some kind of attestation that shows that they just reviewed that this was a flaw in the way that something was coded, and then that can actually bring some conscientiousness now to what they do in the future. And I'm all for that, right? Because that's great. But then there's also having a security related or minded person that sits with that group. um, Maybe it can be from the security team, but maybe it's a security liaison, right? Where you can say that, hey, we're going to pick somebody from the development team that's going to be a representative of security, and they can meet with us twice a month. And we just talk to them about the things that we would like them to look out for as they code and develop, so that we know that we have somebody that's vested in the security aspects within that team that can know how that team culture rides and some of the things like that, because you bring a security person in and then it becomes well, it's always us versus them.
Hmm.
And then it's like, okay, well, what are they trying to change? So then the security guy has to learn their language, learn their terminology, learn the way they like to flow, and then figure out how to get embedded and start making those changes and push and moving them, right, and helping them, guiding them towards a way to do things that the security team would like. So there are multiple ways, but it doesn't happen as much because usually the security team is all hands on deck a lot of the times.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been the security liaison for different teams, and I've been the liaison, like what you said, where you're kind of embedded with the group, but you do report up through security and everything. And then I've also been a security liaison where I do not report up to security at all. If I don't want anything to do with security, I can just, not listen to them. I could just not go to the meetings, and I don't have to, like I don't report up to them. But I'm the only security minded person on that team. And me personally, I don't like the second item, you know, of not reporting up through security, and you're a security person and you're supposed to be doing these security initiatives and whatnot, and you're not on the security team and you don't have that security title. And to be quite honest, sometimes you need that security title. Um, so yeah,
Definitely.
I mean, I feel like with that, there kind of like needs to be almost like an awakening with what actually works compared to what management thinks works. I mean, just to put it bluntly, like I got managers out there that I know that just, I don't know, their heads are in the clouds or something.
Or their bank accounts.
Bank accounts are definitely in the cloud.
Wouldn't it be cool if you could, and this would never happen, right? Because this is completely like, it would cause such a ruckus. But if the security team had the ability to trigger a simulated like exercise where the organization believed that it was under attack,
Hmm.
and it's almost like a red team exercise.
Man, I was somewhere and our red team did that one time where they didn't tell anyone that they were doing it and they just started doing it and that went over really bad.
Oh yeah,
That went over
it's
really badly.
I
That
don't
was
s-
really bad.
I don't see that working out well in any scenario in reality. But
Every time after that they had to tell us when they were doing that.
oh yeah, definitely, and you want to too, right? But it's almost like sometimes, like when you don't understand what the repercussions can be for something, you almost have to experience that, right? And so, like you
Yeah.
said, do you want the we don't want the organization to get breached, um, but we understand that there's just a certain amount of momentum that won't ever be there unless either a competitor gets hit, or there's a event that takes place or incident that takes place within the organization that actually gets everybody to realize that this is not no longer an existential threat. This is a real life threat, right? This is
Mhm.
happening now. This can take place right now. And then it gets everybody to kind of wake up and realize that, no longer, is it about what's been happening, at Sony, or, at, a different place, right? And all the different hacks that have taken place over the last 5, 10 years. No, no, this can happen with us. And even with phishing campaigns, right? And some people out there might have had these experiences before. But when you're first starting a phishing campaign, the amount of like irritation that causes, right, with people. And then they
Yeah.
say, "What the hell? You guys are purposely trying to trick us?" And it's like, do you not understand what is happening out
Yeah.
here?
Don't you think the attackers will purposely try to trick you?
Like,
We're trying to get you prepared.
exactly. It's like, so if we start a phishing campaign in order to prepare you to see these things and recognize them, right, and then
Right.
alert on them, contact the security team and let them know that you've received a phishing email, so that we can actually get communication out to everybody. Well, how are you going to be prepared if you don't practice? And they immediately get it. It's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's so many things in security have to be explained before people realize that what we're talking about makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like this, you know, we're being parents and we're making sure that the kid doesn't, fall down and hurt himself. And they kind of resent that sometimes, like, you guys are just overreacting. And it's like, take a look at the sim and see how many times we're being scanned on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah, right.
by all over the world from all different IPs. It's a nonstop thing, and we have to
Yeah.
be vigilant. So
Oh, man. I mean, I used to run the phishing campaigns at one company, and I mean, I would do my absolute best to get that failure rate as high as it could possibly be. I mean, there was no repercussions for people, no real repercussions. They just have to do like, some phishing training, something like that if they failed. Um, but I mean, I wanted to throw them things that were more realistic than what our attackers are even going to be throwing
yeah,
at them. I want them to like identify a real phishing email and be like, "Oh, that's clearly
yeah,
this because I ran into this problem last month." And people had problems with it, but honestly, I didn't care. And I told them like either you're going to get hit by a really good phishing email and you're going to fail it, or it's going to be me on the other end that sent it to you.
yeah,
You know, would you rather it be me and you fail it with me, or an attacker and we get breached and you're fired? And that's just how it's going to go. I was at a place before where they took their phishing campaigns extremely serious. I mean, like, it was insane. And if you failed it 4 times, just 4 times in your career there, on the fourth time they fired you. It was a fireable offense. They had everyone sign some document saying specifically that they can do that. And I mean, you'd have to go through training. I think it took 2 years for you to like wipe one off your record, but you had to like apply to it, and you couldn't have failed another one since. And then when you apply, basically the security team just sends it to you every day because they don't want anyone to apply. Like there was a process, but no one went through the process.
It's like a hard inquiry on your credit report. Say this go stay for 2 years before it fall off, huh?
It was, I mean, it doesn't fall off automatically either.
Yeah, you have to go
You got
in
to
and
apply.
yeah, that's a little extreme. I don't think that. I mean,
It
so
was.
I can understand, so some organizations actually do bonus structures or do reward structures. So maybe it goes into that, right? Maybe it's that you have
It
a
would affect
performance.
your bonus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it has a performance review, thing, right? And I think that that's a way, right? I don't know how, and I don't know how feasible it would be to right to start tying in some security awareness training and those items for the staff into like the performance reviews or whatever because again it shows up right and whether it's brand reputation, whether it's a breach, whether it's somebody unwillingly clicking on that URL and getting the dropper on that network and now ransomware is propagating, whatever it is, right? It can have long term, huge, implications. So, how does security make it so that this is top of mind, right?
Yep.
One of the things that I was always a big fan of was gamification. So, whether or not there was like a quarterly exercise or definitely quarterly, you probably couldn't do it less than quarterly, where you actually had competitions between different departments for who could uh, call out the most phishing,
Mhm.
attempts. Um, who could spot the USB drop in the parking lot and say that, hey, man, this USB was just out there in the parking lot. I'm bringing it to you guys because I don't want somebody else in this building thinking that, oh, I got a free USB. Let me pop it in. And now there goes the network.
Yep.
Right. But all the other things that you can do, maybe it's a quiz, right? Maybe it's a quiz on data protection and data governance and what you should do if you believe that you have malware on your machine. Who should you contact first? Just ways to gamify it so people can get reward cards. Maybe they can get a free, 2 tickets to the movies. They can take their loved ones or one of their children, go to the ball game, whatever. Right. But just make it so they want to participate in security activities. That it's like, oh man, I'm going to that game today. I'm about
Yeah.
to I'm about to make sure that there's no threats that are trying to attack our environment. Whatever, it may never get to that point where it's really top of mind, but you want to be able to say that you're at least doing something. Um,
That would be pretty cool.
yeah,
Tickets to a Cubs game. Here's a company card. Go drink and eat all you want.
right,
I,
because
let me tell you, I'd ask if I could participate in that because you only got to threaten me with a good time.
yeah, yeah, right. Make it so that hey, each person on this in a department can be a security liaison, and like I said, hey, can you call out the security issues that happen within your department? Can you kind of be that coach? And then maybe if you call out the most items, you can get something as that liaison, as a competition between all the liaisons, where you can say, well, from the application security side, well, I called out, the way that we, create these particular statements and I
Mm.
made sure that we no longer allow for null values or whatever kind of other values could exist that can actually lead to a vulnerability or a bug. Well, put one on the board for you. Maybe the network liaison says, "Man, I made sure we did that Apple review this quarter. I did it myself." Well, that's a little bit more than 1 point. You win. I'm gonna have to give you the win if you do that. But
You're gonna
whatever.
win that month.
Yeah. You're going to win that month. But there's a lot of different things. It's just being creative, but it's so difficult trying to find the time and the support for that type of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like the typical security video training doesn't really work. Um, I mean, from my own experience, right? Like, am I really going to take 2 hours out of my own day, even if it's once a quarter or once a year or whatever, to actually pay attention to these videos and try to answer them. I mean, I'll be honest, what I do, man, I play them videos, I throw it on mute, and I hit next whenever it gets highlighted in the video for me to hit next to move on to the next one, you know? And it's like, if I'm doing this and I'm a security guy, man, how many hundreds of other people are doing this in my org right now? Because it's not like these quizzes are hard, they're kind of common sense. And yeah, I'm sure that they help some people, but I mean, I'm not doing them
Like I said, man, I would tie it to a bonus. Or say, hey, man,
without that reward.
yeah,
It's really difficult to motivate anyone to
yeah.
do it.
I would throw a random question in there about movies or pop culture and say that, hey, while you watch this security awareness training video, it's an hour long. There's going to be a reference that is completely nothing to do with
Hmm.
security. And we're going to quiz you at the end of this. And if you get that right, you get your 2%, added on to your whatever your total, could be. So if you can get a 10% bonus or, maybe it's extra.
Mm,
I don't know.
yeah,
Like I said, in the end, we can only we can meet you halfway, right? Business, organization. We
right.
can meet you halfway. And we know that the material can be dry. Damn it. We're certified in it.
Yeah, we're certified in this dry material.
Yeah,
What you
it's
think
like,
we think of it?
don't believe we do it because it's just that damn exciting. It is exciting, right? But a lot of times it's also because it's needed and it's
Hmm.
required, right? And we're willing to go ahead and also take that extra step and becomes leaders in this space and try to provide guidance and those, that advice on how to do things better. Because I'm pretty sure, Joe, I'm pretty sure a lot of high level security people, mid level security people, we can be in IT and we can just be like, hey, we don't have to call out threats and risk, right?
Yeah,
You asked me to, link that group policy to the domain, and I linked it to the domain,
be so easy.
and you did your job, right?
You ain't got
But
to worry about nothing.
we're going to worry about how that is going to impact a lot of things, right? So the threat modeling, et cetera. And so as it relates to like this exchange vulnerability, right? And like Joe has said, like, what is it that we can do within our? Because I'm telling you, a lot of security people, as this is happening and this is taking place, a lot of us are saying, "Here we go again. Here we go again,"
Yeah,
and it's very difficult to get out in front of it, especially as Joe has said. You have vendors who are integrated into the core fabric of what organizations procure in order to deliver technology services. So whether or not that's how many operating systems out there that most organizations really leverage? Three.
handful
Yeah, yeah, right.
at most.
Yeah, exactly. How many different vendors that provide switches and network core routers, right? So in the end, you're going to see that not a lot of difference is going to take place between these vendors because they have to provide the same service, and it has to be in a way that's intuitive, right? So they're kind of locking themselves into having to repeat patterns that most threat actors are going to know that when that new software is released, I'm pretty sure they're doing this. I'm pretty sure they're doing that. There's a mechanism underneath, there's a fabric underneath that has to do something, right? It has to communicate on the network. It has to have a service that's open, right? It has to have a port that
Yeah,
is leveraging, right? There has to be, hopefully, a firewall rule in place, and there has to be logic in that application, right? So a lot of times you can actually have application that was developed in a way that it's not really showing bugs, it's not really showing vulnerabilities, but the application logic is off. And so what happens is that you can exploit the logic, and that allows for you to actually, be able to, make the machine have to do a check. And if that check actually allows for that threat actor to move forward, it's not necessarily because it was a bug, it's because you didn't do that logic, testing from the perspective of somebody trying to misuse that system.
yeah. I mean, I think a part of it is actually like being educated on how these sort of 0 days and attacks have happened before, right? I feel like that's a key part to any good, security person is that they actually know the history of uh, of these sort of attacks, and knowing that history will kind of tell you, how these attackers are thinking, what they're looking at, and you can better identify it in your environment. Like, oh, would this be vulnerable? In 3 years from now, you can say, well, would this have been vulnerable to the Exchange 0 day? Like, yeah, it's patched, but would it be vulnerable? Is there room for another 0 day there? Like, you can use your head and figure that sort of stuff out.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like where I think that's where the community has to go as a whole. I mean, really, from what I've experienced, there's typically shut up, Siri. There's typically um only a handful of people at most in any given organization that actually do that sort of stuff, and like
Yeah.
we're security professionals, like we need to know, this shit inside and out. We need to know about these 0 days inside and out. Like I guarantee you, I go to half of the security teams that I've been on, and half of those people aren't gonna know about the 0 day. They're not gonna care about the 0 day. It's like, dude, you're security, and they'll be like, I am application security. That is a network issue.
Yeah.
That is not my wheelhouse. Like,
Right.
you should still understand what the packets are. You should still understand how it's all connected and why it matters and all that stuff. And these people, they can't even, tell me that. And I think as a community as a whole, we cannot be slipping into that sort of situation where we're so nonchalant about everything. And it's like, oh, it's not my job. It's like, no, it is your job. If
Well,
security is in your title, it's your job.
it's so. I mean, there's a difference between, and we've talked about it, right? Like number one, leadership. That's a leadership issue.
Yeah.
That's not on an individual. An individual was hired to fulfill a role. Now, if your leader doesn't actually state that you have a community that you're serving, well, guess what you're going to do? You're going to perform your role.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to get, sometimes you don't get the support, sometimes you don't get the resources, sometimes you don't get the kudos for when you do something. You start to see that people start to become less inclined to go out of their way to do extra, and they're just trying to get through their day, right? Because security is, it's it's a stressful job.
Right.
And how often, just think about this, how often do you see security teams that hang out, that blow off the steam, that have that interdepartmental relationship, communication, transparency, uh, you know, um, the 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 some of the things with chemistry that other teams have, right? Considering how stressful the job is, right? I think the ratio was actually lower than most departments
I've
because,
only seen like one or
yeah,
two out of all the places I've been to. Only one or two that, hey, on Tuesday it's happy hour. We're going to the bar across the street. Let's just go get wasted and, chill
well,
out. Let's hang out.
and then get that call that there's an incident.
Yeah, but then you got to have a team that's able to, have enough wherewithal to bring their laptop to the bar. And guess what? You know what? Maybe you're responding to an incident and you're a little drunk. But you know what? If you got a good team around you, they're going to sober you up.
Right.
They're going to get you going on that incident. They're going to provide the assistance as well. And you have the collective mindset right there to get you through. And then we can start drinking again. Okay.
But see, I mean, like I totally agree. But see, from what I've seen, people don't even, if it's a step, if there's a step, if they're trying to go to A to C and B is there, they're not doing
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
Just not doing it, right? Because at a certain point, it becomes not worth it. It
Yeah.
becomes not worth it. I'm telling you. brand new security analyst, man, please, staring in the sock, staring into SIM all day long. Figuring out which alerts are actually not false positives, trying to figure out how these indicators of compromise actually are visualized within this, creating reports, etc. Right, working night shift, all of that, and that's a stressful onboarding, right? And then you move up, and then what are you doing? Right now, you're moving up, and maybe you're an administrator of all these different tools. Now you got to deal with all these vendors. You got to deal with all the software that they don't even support. Right? That if you click one button, it locks out everybody out the damn domain or something. Right? And then you become an engineer, and now you got to work cross functionally, to make sure that all these systems work in a way that actually allows for the architecture, security architecture requirements to be, actually, implemented and delivered.
Got to make sure your solution doesn't rotate every password in the environment exactly when it shouldn't do that.
Yeah, it's so much stress. It's so much stress because the thing is that when you do it well, your sign of success is nobody saying anything to you
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
You being completely everybody being completely oblivious to your existence.
Yep.
That's your sign of success when people aren't yelling at you saying it's the security team, they're the reason why this database isn't working. It's the security team, they're the reason why this web application isn't, allowing for users to connect to it. It's the security team, they're the reason why this server keeps rebooting because they wanted to patch it. Like
It's a real bad time when the CEO of your company knows the exact technology by the name that you are running and everyone by their first name on your team. It is really bad.
yeah, man, that means
Really
that
bad.
it got you on speed dial. Knows what is the problem? Is it the app? Come on now, like let's get this. It's an issue, and this is not to dissuade anybody from doing the things that they need to do in order to try to have that community. But like I said, it's a lot more difficult than, or let me just say that it's more to it than the wanting, right? It's more to it than wanting it.
For sure.
It's you actually have to have positive reinforcement for when you actually reach your hand out and try to do some of these things, because like you said, it can be tough just to threat model with somebody in the security, right? So if you say, hey, I want to have a threat modeling session for this new solution, let's go over all the trust boundaries, all the the components, the elements. I want to make sure that this is working appropriately.
Yeah.
Man, a lot of people say I ain't got no time for that. Like, what are you trying to do? Win employee of
Too
the
busy
month?
for that, man.
Yeah, like what are you doing? It's like, well, we should do this because we want to make sure that the application has a lower, attack surface.
Yeah.
And then it can be that sometimes, and I've heard this. One of the criticisms I've gotten specifically, I was told that I was
Oh
too
man, you can't be
security,
doing that.
I'm too security, right? It's like, oh no, you too security. Like what?
You can't be doing that, Derek. Come on.
Yeah, I know. So
You
it's
can't be
like
doing
you have to balance it, right? Because if you the department of no, I'm telling you, you won't get those invites to those meetings.
that. Yeah.
People will not bring you that new SaaS solution that they're putting on their credit card and about to start using. They will not bring certain things to your attention. And so you have to find a balance where it's like, well, we might not be able to do everything right now, right? But let's create a baseline here where we say, I at least want to know what the hell the risks are, right? If you're going to get an exception, you're going to accept it, that's fine. But, sometimes it's just tough to get to that point, like you said, where you're sharing all the threat intelligence, right? Sharing it with a community. That's
Yeah.
tough, man. I think, again, that's a sign of maturity. Once you get there, man, you got a well oiled machine.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Um Man, crazy to security.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It was like, I'm like, I thought it was a compliment to me. But considering how much leeway and how much I am and I'm willing to work with people, I was like, "Oh man, you have no idea of how more restrictive I can be." You know?
Man, so I think it I think how you react to requests kind of comes down to your role. If you're an engineer engineering a solution, a security tool, and someone's coming to you like, "Oh, can we integrate it with this? Can we do this? Can we loosen up the controls over here?" The method that I went with throughout my career was no. Just before you finish your sentence, before you finish, no. And if you ask me 3 times, all right, now I know it's something I should probably consider and pay attention to because you want it that bad or you need it that bad, to get something done, to increase something, right? Like if you're willing to defeat my no and try to persuade me 3 times, now you have my respect. But as my career progressed and I'm no longer, necessarily just an engineer on a tool, I'm an engineer designing solutions for an environment.
Yeah.
I am much more of I don't want to say a yes man because I won't just say yes to everything, but I'm more of a solution getter, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and tell you no. I'm going to sit there and say, yeah, you know what? This environment does need that solution. This environment could really use SageMaker Studio. How do we get that approved and accepted? And how do we, allow you and your team to use that in a secure way? How do we get that done? Let's get it done, you know? And so I think it's a bit of graduation in your security career of how you interact with different, work items that are coming your way. I mean, at one point in time, if the work didn't come up from my manager, I don't give a shit. Go to my manager.
Yeah.
If he thinks it's important, I'll handle it. If he thinks it's important, he'll give it to me. It don't
Yep.
matter.
Yep.
Don't bring that shit to me.
Yeah.
And I think, not not to when I'm talking to new people that are like, "Oh yeah, I want to get into security. I want to do this, I want to do that." That's great. But I try really, really, really hard to dissuade you from getting into security. I try really, really hard. Like I really go out of my way to dissuade you of getting into security for I don't know, basically hours. I mean, I'll do it for hours, 3, 4 hours. I'll do it. And if my dissuasion or my arguments for why you shouldn't get into security are big enough in your head for you to not get into security, then security ain't for you. But if you're willing to be like, hey, you know, fuck whatever he's telling me, fuck all the politics and the learning curve and the shit that is wrong that you can't fix because there's an exception for it and whatever. I still want to get into it after all of that. I think it's a really cool, interesting field that I'll learn a lot in and I'll grow a lot in and I'll make a decent amount of money so that I can support my family and everything. Absolutely. Go for it at that point because if you can't be dissuaded like that, if you literally have to be in the field before you get dissuaded from it necessarily, then I think that's the best possible situation because then you can say, yeah, I was a security engineer. I didn't like it. I went back to being a system engineer or whatever, you know?
Yeah. I mean, so I think that's a good approach. I could see, the what you're trying to get there. You're trying to make sure that that person is going to have, the resiliency to
Right.
overcome being told that he shouldn't get into it or she shouldn't get into it. Um, that they're going to, say to hell with all the doubters.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. So I'm going to do it. No matter if a
Yeah.
thousand people or a million people tell me I can't do it, hell, you're just giving me more fuel so that when I do it, I'm gonna have an even bigger Cheshire grin on my face when I accomplish it. So I
Yeah.
definitely get that. And you don't want, and it's the same thing I learned over time, right? It was like I try to now, later, as I get, older in my life, I realize my time, and I wasted a lot of time. It's valuable. So when people come to me and they ask for, recommendations or guidance or mentoring or coaching, right? The first thing I'll give them is that this is the assignment that you have to do first, right? And it's not an assignment that I'm assigning. It's just I need you to validate that this is something that you're really going to do. So if you want me to assist you, you have to read that chapter first. And then we're going to
Yep.
talk about the chapter because I want to be able to discuss some of the terminology with you, some of the concepts with you, but I don't want to give you too much advice before you've even taken your first step because, well, what happens if you get to page 3 and you're like, man, I'm not doing this. Ugh, this was a waste of my time. Well, that meant I could have wasted hours of preparing a roadmap, right? Or, structuring a strategy for you that was customized for you for what you wanted to do. And you didn't even really want to get into it like that because you realized that, well, there was going to be work involved. And so I can definitely understand that. And then the second thing to hark back to your point right before that, which is that yes, saying no at the beginning, early in your career, sure. 'Cause you can always pass it up top.
Yep.
But the concept of what you're talking about is a security architecture concept. It's called business enablement, right?
Well, that's what I've grown into,
Yeah. But
you
it's
know?
but it's because you've progressed through those different
Right.
phases. And like I said, I mean, you've been an engineer for a while. Your step, your you're half in architecture, half in engineering. Engineering is there's components of engineering that's in architecture, right? So it's not necessarily a giant difference, right? Architecture, you're looking at things more holistically from the business requirements and the business drivers, and then abstracting certain things on different views. But you're right, it's business enablement. So when people come to me and they say they want to do something, I bust out my SAPSA questionnaire that I developed and I'm getting all the contextual and the conceptual information that I need before I even start talking anything technical. I don't want to talk anything technical with you until I understand the business requirements.
Yeah.
I need to understand what are the assets involved. I need to understand what are the regulatory risks, what are the contractual risks. I need to understand the timing requirements, the geographic locations where any of these services are going to actually be, because that matters, right? I need to know what's your expected loss if this service is not available for an hour, because that's going to determine for me how much high availability and load balancing may need to be implemented down the line. And then I want to
Right.
understand, out of all these different activities that are going to take place, I need to start aligning them to all the different functional areas, right? So are we going to have application hardening? Are we going to have server hardening? Are we going to have you know uh, other type of functional areas involved with this? And so that helps, right? Because you give them that, and then they have to come back and they have to fill all that out. And what happens is that you'll see them disappear.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you want something? Huh? Okay, well, give me some information here in this questionnaire, and then it'll go away for about 2 or 3 weeks. But then when they come back, they actually have a well thought out business case,
Yeah.
right? And now we know that they're serious, right? Because one of the questions also is this funded? Please tell me it's funded. You don't want to get through working with a group for a month and a half, and find out that at the end, well, ain't no budget for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people they'll get brought solutioning questions and get the business requirements. Get the business requirements first.
Man, like recently I did a project for 9 months for it to just get taken from me and put on hold. That was 9 months of work for nothing. For nothing.
Yeah, that's hard.
That was
That is hard. It's one of the hardest things. I mean, to put in all that time, right?
nine months.
I used to tell a lady all the time. I was like, can you imagine like going to the gym every day and working out hard for 2 hours and not getting any results after a year?
Nothing. Yeah.
That would suck. right? Because if you don't have any results, then what all that hard effort is for, right?
Right.
And yeah, so I can definitely feel you there, man. It's deflating, right?
It is. It's like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? If you guys aren't gonna take my work and do something with it, allow me to do something with it, like it's crazy, man. It was so yeah. Deflating is a good word.
Yeah.
That's a very good word for that. I was completely deflated. I'm still deflated,
We all have those things. We think back, we just like, oh man, what a lost opportunity. Like my
right?
goodness. Yeah. And luckily, like I said, if you are, I don't know, man, it depends. Right. Me, I like to build templates and I like to keep them, what do you call it? Vendor neutral,
Mhm.
organization neutral. So that, like some of the stuff you do, always have it, whether it's in your mind or whatever, that you can reproduce it. Because again, people should always, whatever work you perform, you need to think about it from an optimization standpoint. Whatever you're doing, try to figure out a way to do it in a way that it can be repeatable.
Right.
And whether that's creating templates or frameworks or whatever, right? Because the thing is that don't let that go to waste. Don't let things that you've done, that you prepared, that you studied, that you researched, if you created policies, if you created frameworks, if you created all these things and it doesn't get leveraged, well, damn it, leverage it somehow,
Right.
you know? And it doesn't always have to be, a total loss, because you do get the experience of actually
Mm.
going through it, right?
Maybe you go somewhere else and use it.
Maybe you start your own thing and use it,
Yeah.
you know? um there's all types of ways where you can get that effort back, in the future. So I'll just say that, right? Just don't set everything on fire and be like, oh, like
It's easy to do that sometimes, man.
yeah,
Especially, you know what? It's a whole lot easier to do that when you don't have like the camaraderie of a team to go out for drinks, right? Like
yeah,
when I lost the ability to just walk over to my desk and be like, "Hey, y'all want to go for some drinks?" Like it's been a hell of a day. And someone will always say yes, like when I lost the ability to do that, like then it in my head it turns into, oh, we'll just burn it to the ground. Fuck all this. It doesn't matter. But when I get the drinks, it's like, you know what? It's gonna be all right.
yeah.
Maybe the next time I spend 9 months on something, it'll get approved, you know?
I feel you. Yeah,
But
man.
you know what? When it doesn't get approved in 9 months, I need a whole lot more drinks.
The work from home because of COVID has impacted me from that perspective a lot more,
Yeah.
because I at least had to go back every 2 months, 2.5 months to the office for like 3, 4 days, and I get to meet up with my team. And we would have had the opportunity to talk about things.
Yeah.
If we didn't like, if I didn't like a way that, the direction we went when it came to, uh, this high trust thing, maybe we should have grabbed all the attestations the quarter before when we were doing a SOC, and we missed out on that opportunity. You can bring it up, right, in person, right, when you have that ability. But when you're remote, it's like, what, you go type that message? No, you really, I don't think anybody wants to talk about anything technical and teams. Just from what are you using, whatever you're using, having technical conversations in a chat just doesn't translate.
Yeah. It's
Um,
difficult.
it's difficult, especially, I mean, now for networkers, it's different, right? You're just throwing network statements in a box and shit, and
Right.
you know, verifying them, so you guys can do that. But like when you're talking about like a tactical, situation and how you're going to handle something, it's best to have a call. And it's even better if you can do it in person. So yeah, I
Mhm.
definitely miss that, because then you can also kind of get out that frustration that you had. Like, can you believe they did this? And then you can have that validation from your teammate that lets you know that they also believe it was
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. But when you're by yourself, you start thinking that, well, maybe you crazy because you don't think that anybody else cares.
Yep.
And then it becomes a situation in which you're like, I don't know, man. It's either me or we don't have the same goals anymore.
It turns into a situation where it's just like, man, I just need to leave. I need to go somewhere else, you
Yeah,
know?
you don't know. You can't even see if you're seeing eye from eye because you can't see them eye for eye, right?
Yeah.
Or eye to eye. So yeah, I mean, but at the same time, that's why I like frameworks so much. That's why I like standards so
Mhm.
much because it's like it's right there. Are we doing this or aren't we? Let's just talk about these standards. Are we going to do vulnerability and patch management the way that NIST says it, or the way that CIS says it, or the way that High Trust recommends we do it, or are we just going to do whatever way we feel like doing it?
Yeah.
Because if we're going to do it that way, well, damn it, if Exchange servers get hit up, I don't know if I know how to help you
Right.
because unless you ring that alarm bell and that red light comes down and you says, well, I'm going to give Derek the keys to to steer the ship. Well, then who's going to be the leader, that steps in and guides us when all the processes that led to it were ad hoc in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I think we covered this topic pretty well. Uh, Pretty well. I mean, there's going to be plenty more. We're going to be talking about plenty more 0 days, when they come out and whatnot.
Definitely.
Um, it's crazy. The whole thing started on January 6th with the Capitol riots. I mean, how insane is that?
When they first detected it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh well. Well, everyone, we have a lot of things coming up. We are working on scheduling some guests to come in. These are going to be some awesome guests that we think that all of you guys are really going to enjoy. They should be getting on our schedule pretty soon. Here, we're working with them. Some very busy people. Once you hear who they are, you'll totally understand why it's taken us this long to schedule people out. Um, yeah, and I mean, we're a day late from our normal release schedule, but every once in a while you gotta let your hair down. I don't have it anymore, but gotta let your hair down, gotta drink a little, So Saturday was my drinking day.
Yeah, hey, you gotta throw it in there every once in a while.
I
That's
mean,
all.
gotta release, right? I just got pulled from a 9 month work thing, So
Hey, sometimes you just got to have a nice old fashioned or whatever it is you're drinking.
yeah, yeah, it was good. Well, thanks, guys. Thank you for listening. You guys have been great as always. We will be posting another one on Wednesday, like we always do. Until then, stay strong, man. Security's difficult right now. See you guys. Thanks.